Well, everybody, it is time for us to talk about Clone High once again, now that the second season of the revival has dropped on Max, and I have to say, I really enjoyed this second season when compared to the first one. I was really hard on the first season, and a lot of that is because the new characters and the old characters just didn't mesh well at all. Some of the characters, specifically the old characters like Joan and Abe and JFK, were pretty well developed, and I was able to understand where they were coming from because I've seen them before in the first original season of this show. But the new characters were really hard to understand. I didn't get what Confucius wanted. He was just sort of a projection of what the writers thought young people were like. Frida, I didn't understand in the slightest. She was just a projection of what the writers thought cool was. Cleo, don't even know what to say about Cleo. She's just sort of vapid and doesn't have anything to do in the first season, and in the second season she's kind of vapid, but she has way more to do, and she actually has interests and goals this time around. And that's what won me over with this second season of Clone High. This time around, every single character in the main cast, maybe apart from Topher, but he isn't really in the main cast anymore. It's more about Confucius, Frida, Harriet, JFK, Abe, and Joan. That's our main cast that we're looking at right now, and they are working in a way that they didn't in the first season. Everyone seems to have goals, everyone has people that they like and they don't like, they have interests. Frida is actually painting something in this season, which I don't think she did in the entire first season, despite being a clone of a famous artist. But in this second season, she actually feels like not only a clone of Frida Kahlo, but also a character. She feels like her own character, which is so refreshing. I am so happy they were able to find their footing in the writer's room this time around. I know people sometimes are like, oh, you're just like tearing a show apart, you're being overly mean. People worked really hard on this. I know people worked really hard on this. That's why it sucks to say when something sucks, like the first season of Clone High. It wasn't very good. But here's the thing, when a show is bad in its first season and it gets a second season, there's hope for it to be better, and there's hope for the writers and the team behind the show to learn from their mistakes. And I feel like they did with Clone High. This second season has characters that work and interact with each other in ways that make sense. Each character has motivations, they have things that they like and things that they don't like. You get them, you look at them, you hear them, and by the end of the season, you understand where these characters are coming from and what they're after. And there's no better example of this in this second season, and this is gonna shock some people that saw my original review, but Frida and Cleo work incredibly well this time around. There is an episode dedicated to their relationship and their insecurities on top of that, which doesn't come up nearly at all in the first season. This time around, it is so much better, and I won't spoil the episode. It's a parody of Cyrano de Bergerac mixed with Theranos, I guess, the Theranos scam, if you remember that. It's tremendous. I really enjoyed that episode. The plot line was a little bit played out, but with these characters and with this setting, it works. Old things feel a little bit fresher when you get these characters actually working, and that's the key, I think, with Clone High going forward. The more emphasis they put on these characters, the more relationships they put them in, the more drama they shuffle around with all this high school nonsense, I think it's only gonna keep getting better, and I'm really excited to see what they do in the future. So the characters this time around, way better. Are they perfect? No, sometimes Harriet doesn't have enough to do, sometimes JFK doesn't have enough to do. He's a little underplayed in this season. Cleo's a little underplayed in this season, but she's so much better than how she is in the last one that I kinda can forgive it. There's still issues, don't get me wrong, but it is such a massive improvement over the first season to me when it comes to these characters that I'm willing to forgive some of the weaker moments, because now I'm more confident that this team can actually fix those mistakes in the future. It might not be perfect when it comes to the characters. The storylines and satire is still weaker than it was in the original show. There are some standout episodes, like I mentioned, with the Cyrano's episode, or with the episode where Scudworth tries to turn Clone High into a religious school to avoid paying taxes. I think those two work pretty dang well. The episode where Frida joins the snorkeling team is a pretty good satire or parody of school sports by using a really stupid sport like snorkeling. There's definitely some standouts, and when it comes to the satire and parody, they're not usually the best episodes, I would say, which is a little underwhelming, because that's kind of my favorite thing about Clone High, when they take these things that so many high schoolers and so many other shows would take so seriously and they just make an entire episode joking about it. I really enjoy that, and the satire parody episodes tend to be less interesting than the episodes where the characters are dealing with each other or dealing with their relationships. And that's not so much of a problem. It's more of a personal preference, I guess. I feel like the parody and satire could mix in some of these character relationships a bit more. Maybe make that work, like with the episode where Harriet and Joan are feuding over a school play that they're putting on. But again, that episode also fell pretty flat because the characters around them just weren't really fleshed out. There's still some work to do, all right? Don't get me wrong. There is still some work to do to get this show to the point where I think it is really, really great. Right now, though, I would say this second season is good. It's pretty dang good. This new season is a great example of, for one, learning from constructive criticism. This is so much better than the first season in my book. And number two, it shows how good characters can elevate stories that might be a little bit played out or a little bit cliche. The appeal of watching a show like Clone High, even when it does an episode, like I'm going to bring it up again, the Cyrano episode, which is a parody of Cyrano de Bergerac. How many times has Cyrano been parodied in different TV shows? It's probably countless times at this point. But with these characters in this setting, with this approach, it can still work. An old idea, a played out cliche idea can still work with a new and different approach. And hey, isn't that what this Clone High revival is anyways? It's taking an old show and bringing it back. And sure, they slipped up in the beginning. I fully believe the first season of this show is not worth watching. But the second one, goodness, it won me over. And I am genuinely excited for what they can do in season 3. Now, the real kicker, what would I give this show out of 10? Now, I've said a lot of really positive things because that's what stood out to me. There were so many negatives last time around that that's basically all I could talk about. The positives, there just wasn't enough. This time around, the positives really stood out to me, but there are still issues. The comedy didn't always land for me. There's a really big emphasis on puns in this season, and puns, some people say, are hit and miss. I like to say puns are hit, miss, and glance, meaning that a really good pun will make me laugh and a really bad pun will make me laugh. If it hits or miss, either way, it can work for me. But if it kind of glances off and you're just like, oh, okay, I don't tend to laugh at it. And there are a lot of moments like that throughout this season, and for some reason that was like their main source of comedy was puns. So some people are going to get a kick out of that. I got a kick out of it for a little bit, but it got pretty old after a while. I would hope that in the next season they put more of an emphasis on the jokes that deal with not only the characters but also their historical counterparts. One of my favorite jokes in this whole new season is centered around JFK with an angel and a devil on his shoulder. I won't spoil the joke because I think it's that good and I think people should watch this season, but more stuff like that. I like to see little callbacks to the historical characters that these characters were cloned from, and you see that sort of come out in unexpected ways where it's like, oh, that's right, this is a clone of JFK, or oh, that's right, this is a clone of Harriet Tubman or Joan of Arc or whatever. There are moments like that in this second season of Clone High, and that was again a really big complaint that I and many other people had in the first season, was that these characters don't really feel like clones of historical figures. But this time around, I felt like there was more of an emphasis on it. The only one that didn't really feel like they had any sort of energy from their historical counterpart was Harriet, but Harriet is also a character that's filling a role and she has things to do and she has motivations. It's interesting, at least. It's not a cloned historical figure really for Harriet's character, but she's still interesting on her own, so I'm willing to forgive it a bit more. But maybe in the next season they find a way to bring out a little bit more of the Harriet Tubman in her. Maybe you do what you did with Gandhi, where Gandhi can't live up to his expectations of being a clone of Mahatma Gandhi. Maybe give that same energy to Harriet, because it's not being used on Gandhi, that's for sure. Give her that plot line for one episode, and there you go. You've got it figured out. But I think this is about where I should leave it. Again, with the second season of Clone High, just like the first season of this revival, I feel like I could talk about it for a really, really long time. There's a lot going on. There are a lot of positives. There are a lot of negatives. There are a lot of things I still think they need to fix and kind of flesh out. But on the whole, this is an improvement over the first season to me. And if you're a really big fan of Clone High and you wanted more of it, and maybe you saw the first season and didn't like it, give this one a try. It starts off slow for sure, but as it goes along, all these characters have things to do that I think are worth watching in this new season. And hey, if you don't like the clones at all, Mr. B and Scudworth also have a really fun plot line that leads to something interesting at the end of the show. So on the whole, I enjoyed this second season. It's not a masterpiece. I wouldn't call it great, but it's pretty dang good. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10, like 6.5, 7 out of 10, right around there. So, you know, pretty dang good. Big improvement over the 4 score I gave it for its first season. So that's where I'll leave it. Thank you all very much for watching this video. Apologies for it taking me a little bit extra long. It's been a really busy week with work, what with the launch of Suicide Squad and all, so I've been dealing with editing a bunch of stuff on that, but hey, we're here now. We got Orion in the Dark, which I'm gonna watch, the new Charlie Kaufman written children's film, so I'm gonna check that out. Maybe keep an eye out for a video on that on the channel. If not that, who knows? I don't know what the next video is gonna be if it's not Orion in the Dark, so that's it. Bye! Like and subscribe, all that fun stuff, bye!